What if you could improve your English and gain real confidence with just one story? That's exactly what we're doing today. We're going to follow the journey of a shy barista who uses a single, simple story to completely change the way he speaks English. You'll see how he breaks through his fear, and you'll learn the exact techniques he uses so you can do it too. We're not just going to listen to a story, we're going to live it, learn from it, and practice with it together. So stick around, because the surprising ending to this story might just deliver the shocking confidence you've been looking for. Part 1. The Story: The Barista and the Mischievous Monkey. In the quiet heart of a city that never seemed to sleep, there was a small cafe called The Daily Grind. It was a peaceful little island in a sea of noise and haste. The air inside always smelled of freshly ground coffee beans, old books, and a hint of cinnamon from the pastries sitting under a glass dome on the counter. And this was Leo's world. Leo was a barista, and he was good at his job, really good. He could craft the perfect latte with a delicate foam heart on top. He knew the precise temperature for brewing green tea. He could remember his regular customers' orders without even writing them down. But Leo had a secret, a quiet frustration that hummed just beneath the surface of his calm daily routine. He was shy, and his English felt like a wall between him and the world he desperately wanted to connect with. Every morning, he'd practice a few phrases in the mirror before his shift. "Hello, what can I get for you? Would you like any sugar with that? Have a great day." The words were correct, the grammar was fine, but they felt hollow, like borrowed clothes that didn't quite fit. They were functional, but they weren't communication. They didn't build bridges, they just completed transactions. His greatest challenge and his greatest motivation arrived at 10:05 a.m. sharp, every single day. He'd learned her name from a credit card payment, Ilara. Ilara was a fixture in the cafe, as reliable as the morning sun. She was a foreign customer, and to Leo, she was a universe of intrigue. She would walk in, a different thick book always tucked under her arm, and offer him a small, polite smile. She'd order a large black coffee, no sugar, no milk. While he prepared her drink, she would find her favorite corner table, the one by the window looking out onto the bustling street. Leo longed to say more to her. He wanted to ask about the books she was reading. He wanted to ask where she was from, what she thought of the city, if she enjoyed the rain that so often pattered against the cafe window. But the words would just get stuck in his throat, tangled in a net of fear and self-doubt. What if he used the wrong tense? What if his pronunciation was weird? What if she just smiled politely and turned away, leaving him standing there with his clumsy, broken English? So he said nothing beyond the usual script. "Large black coffee for Ilara," he'd call out. She would come to the counter, give him another small smile, and take her coffee back to her world of words by the window. This silent ritual had gone on for 3 months. Each day was a repeat of the last, a loop of missed opportunities that left Leo feeling more and more invisible. One evening, after another day of silent service, Leo sat in his small apartment, scrolling aimlessly on his laptop. He felt like he'd tried everything to improve his English. He had vocabulary apps on his phone that sent him daily notifications he usually ignored. He had grammar books with pages of rules that just made his head spin. He'd tried watching movies with subtitles, but he'd get so lost in the plot he'd forget he was supposed to be learning. It all felt like work, like a chore. It was boring, and it wasn't helping him with his real problem, the fear of actually speaking. He typed a desperate phrase into the search bar: how to make learning English fun. He scrolled past language schools and tutoring services until a headline caught his eye. It was from a blog about language acquisition. The title was simple: "Learn Like a Child, the Power of a Single Story." He clicked. The article argued that the human brain is wired for stories. We don't really remember lists of rules or isolated words very well, but we remember characters, we remember emotions, we remember plots. The article suggested a method. Find one short, simple story, read it, listen to it, and then learn to tell it yourself. Make the story your own. The author claimed this process builds a special kind of confidence, a fluency that doesn't come from memorizing grammar tables.
Leo was skeptical, but he was also desperate. He was tired of his mundane routine and his wall of silence. He clicked a link in the article that led to a website with simple short stories for English learners. He scrolled through titles like The Friendly Dog and A Trip to the Beach. They seemed too simple, almost childish. He was about to close the tab when a title that seemed a little more interesting caught his eye: Zeke the Zookeeper and the Mischievous Monkey. Intrigued, he clicked on it. The story was short, maybe only 500 words. He read it once, silently. Then, following the blog's advice, he found an audio version and listened. The narrator had a clear, expressive voice. Leo closed his eyes and just listened, letting the story paint a picture in his mind. This is the story he heard. The story: Zeke the Zookeeper and the Mischievous Monkey. Zeke the Zookeeper loved his job at the city zoo. He loved the roaring lions and the graceful giraffes. But most of all, he loved Milo, the small, clever monkey who lived in the primate enclosure. Milo was a local celebrity. Visitors would gather for hours to watch his antics. He could untie shoelaces with his tiny, nimble fingers. He could mimic the visitors, pretending to take pictures with a piece of fruit. Everyone thought Milo was just a bit of harmless fun. They called him a mischievous monkey. Zeke knew better. Every afternoon at 3 p.m. after most visitors had left, Zeke would do the final feeding. He'd go to Milo's enclosure with a bucket of fresh bananas and mangoes. "Hello, Milo," Zeke would say with a wink. "Have you had a productive day?" Milo would chitter and screech, jumping up and down. To anyone watching, it looked like a monkey excited for dinner, but it was a code. One jump meant a wallet. 2 jumps meant a smartphone. A long, loud screech meant something truly special, a watch or a piece of jewelry. Today was a screech day. As Zeke opened the gate, Milo scurried over, not for the mango in Zeke's hand, but for the pocket of Zeke's jacket. With a movement too fast for most eyes to follow, Milo dropped a sparkling diamond earring into Zeke's palm. Zeke quickly pocketed it and gave Milo a large, ripe mango as a reward. "Good work, my little accomplice," Zeke whispered. "You're more than just mischievous, you're a professional." Later that night, long after the zoo was dark and silent, Zeke sat at his kitchen table under a single dim light. The diamond earrings sparkled next to a small pile of wallets, 3 smartphones, and a gold watch. It had been a very good week. He looked at a blueprint spread across the table, the layout of the city's most famous jewelry store. He picked up the earring and smiled. "Phase 1 is complete," he said to the empty room. "Tomorrow, Milo, we begin Phase 2. Leo opened his eyes. He blinked. He had expected a cute story about a playful monkey. He had not expected a story about a tiny, furry criminal and his corrupt zookeeper accomplice planning a heist. He just burst out laughing. The sheer absurdity of it, the unexpected twist, was just delightful. He read the story again, this time out loud. His voice was hesitant at first. Zeke the Zookeeper. He stumbled over the word. He tried again. Zookeeper. Zeke the Zookeeper loved his job. He spent the next hour in his apartment, which suddenly felt less like a lonely box and more like a rehearsal space. He practiced telling the story. He focused on the words that felt strange in his mouth. Mischievous. He said it 10 times. Mischievous. Mischievous. He broke it down, then put it back together. He practiced accomplice. He looked up the definition just to be sure. A person who helps someone else to commit a crime. He grinned. He didn't just read the words, he tried to perform them. When he read Zeke's line, "Have you had a productive day?" he put a little wink in his voice, just like the story said. When he described Milo's screech, he made a little high-pitched sound himself, then laughed at how silly he sounded. Something strange was happening. He wasn't bored. He wasn't frustrated. He was having fun. The story was so ridiculous that he couldn't take himself too seriously. He wasn't a student struggling with English anymore. He was a storyteller sharing a funny secret. For the first time, learning English felt like play. He practiced the story until he knew it by heart. He could tell it without looking at the text. He walked around his apartment, gesturing as he spoke, imagining he was telling it to an audience. He was no longer just Leo, the shy barista. He was Leo, the narrator of a strange tale about a criminal monkey. The next morning, Leo woke up feeling different. The usual knot of anxiety in his stomach, it was gone, replaced by a light, bubbly feeling. The story was still in his head, and the memory of him practicing made him smile. As he put on his apron at the cafe, he felt a spark of something he hadn't felt in a long, long time. Confidence. It was a strange, shocking confidence, born from the absurdity of a monkey heist. At 10:05 a.m., the bell above the door chimed. Ilara walked in. She wore a dark blue raincoat and tiny droplets of water glistened on her shoulders. Her book was tucked under her arm, as always. She approached the counter. "Hello," she said, her voice as soft as the morning rain. "A large black coffee, please." This was it. This was the moment. Leo's heart started to beat a little faster, but it wasn't the familiar rhythm of fear, it was anticipation. The old script, the old Leo, would have just nodded and turned to the espresso machine, but the new Leo, the storyteller, had a different idea. He made her coffee, his hands moving with their usual practiced grace. He swirled the hot liquid in the cup, put a lid on it, and slid it across the counter toward her. She reached for it, her fingers brushing his for a fraction of a second. "Here you are," he said. His voice was steady. Then he took a breath and decided to jump. He decided to be the mischievous monkey. "Be careful out there," he said, looking her directly in the eye. "You never know when you might meet a mischievous monkey." The words just hung in the air between them. Ilara froze. Her hand stopped just short of the cup. She looked at him, her head tilted. Her expression wasn't annoyance or confusion, it was surprise, followed by a slow, spreading smile that completely transformed her face. For the first time, Leo saw her real smile, not just the small, polite one. It reached her eyes, making them sparkle. Then she laughed, a clear, genuine laugh that seemed to fill the entire cafe. "A mischievous monkey?" she repeated, her accent making the words sound like music. "That is not what I was expecting to hear this morning." Leo felt a rush of relief so powerful it almost made him dizzy. He'd done it. He had said something new, something strange, something his, and the world hadn't ended. In fact, it had just opened up. "I'm sorry," he said, a grin spreading across his own face. "That was a little random. It's from a story I read." She picked up her coffee but didn't leave. She leaned against the counter. "A story? That's funny. When you said that, for a second, I thought you knew what I was reading." She held up her book. The cover showed a silhouette of a man in a fedora and the title in bold letters, The Casebook of Inspector Dubois. It was a collection of detective stories. "I thought maybe there was a monkey-related crime in my book that I hadn't gotten to yet," she said, her eyes twinkling with amusement. "No, nothing that clever," Leo said, laughing with her. "My story is about a zookeeper and his monkey who's secretly a master thief. His name is Milo." "A master thief?" Ilara was captivated. "Please, you have to tell me more. What does this Milo steal?" And so Leo did. Standing right there behind the counter of the Daily Grind with the scent of coffee in the air, he told her the story of Zeke and the mischievous monkey. He didn't just recite it, he performed it. He lowered his voice for Zeke's lines. He described Milo's nimble fingers and his coded screeches. He found that the words he had practiced so much the night before came easily, flowing with a natural rhythm. He wasn't thinking about grammar or tenses, he was just sharing a story that made him laugh. Ilara listened, completely engrossed. When he got to the end, with Zeke planning the jewel heist, she gasped and then clapped her hands together softly. "That is brilliant," she exclaimed. "An accomplice monkey. I love it. That's better than half the stories in this book." "I thought so too," Leo said, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "My name is Ilara, by the way," she said, extending her hand over the counter. "I'm Leo," he replied, shaking her hand. "Leo," she repeated, as if testing the name. "Well, Leo, thank you for the coffee and for the wonderful story. You're a very good storyteller."
She finally picked up her coffee and went to her table by the window. But this time, something was different. Every few minutes, she'd look up from her book, catch his eye, and smile. It was a shared secret, a bridge built with the absurd story of a criminal monkey. The wall of silence was gone. It hadn't been knocked down by a grammar rule or a vocabulary list. It had been dismantled by a single, silly story that gave a shy barista the shocking confidence to say something unexpected, and in doing so, to finally be heard. The rest of the day, Leo felt like he was walking on air. The mundane routine of the cafe wasn't mundane anymore. It was the backdrop for a new chapter, a chapter he himself had started, all thanks to one story. Part 2. Let's talk about the language. What a fantastic story of courage and connection, right? Leo's journey shows us that learning English doesn't have to be about boring rules. It can be about having fun and finding confidence in the most unexpected places. So let's follow the method that helped Leo so much. We're going to break down some key English vocabulary and phrases from the story. This is such an important step. By understanding these words and phrases deeply, you make them your own, just like Leo did. For each one, I'll give you a simple definition and 2 new example sentences so you can see how to use them in different situations. All right, let's dive in. 1. Mundane. In the story, we heard he was tired of his mundane routine and his wall of silence. The word mundane is an adjective that means very ordinary, lacking interest or excitement. In other words, dull or boring. It's a perfect word to describe daily routines or jobs that feel the same every single day. For example, after the excitement of his vacation, he found it difficult to return to his mundane life of paperwork and meetings. She wanted to be a painter and escape what she saw as a mundane future in her small town. So when you feel like your days are repetitive and not very exciting, you can say you're stuck in a mundane routine. 2. A fixture. The story said Ilara was a fixture in the cafe, as reliable as the morning sun. A fixture is a noun. When we talk about a person this way, we mean they've been present in a particular place for so long that it's hard to imagine that place without them. They're a permanent and familiar part of it. For example, the old professor was a fixture at the university. He had been teaching there for over 40 years. That little dog is a fixture in our neighborhood. You can see him sitting on his porch every single afternoon. Think about your own life. Is there a person who is a fixture at your school, your workplace, or your favorite cafe? 2. Intrigued. Leo felt this way about Ilara. We heard, to Leo, she was a universe of intrigue. The adjective is intrigued. To be intrigued means to be very interested in something or someone because they seem strange, mysterious, or unusual. It's that feeling of wanting to know more. It's even stronger than just being interested. For example, the detective was intrigued by the strange clue left at the crime scene. It didn't seem to make any sense. I was intrigued by the book's title, so I decided to buy it and see what it was about. When something catches your curiosity and you just have to know more, you are intrigued. Now here's a wonderful idiom that wasn't literally in our story, but it perfectly describes what Leo had to do. He had to pluck up the courage to talk to Ilara. To pluck up the courage means to force yourself to be brave enough to do something you're frightened of doing. You can imagine courage is like a flower, and you're reaching out and picking it, or plucking it. For example, he finally plucked up the courage to ask his boss for a raise. She, after weeks of hesitation, plucked up the courage to sign up for the public speaking course. Leo plucked up the courage to use a very unusual sentence, and it worked out perfectly for him. 5. Mischievous. This is the key word from our little story within a story, Zeke the zookeeper and the mischievous monkey. Mischievous is an adjective that describes behavior that's playful and causes a bit of trouble, but not in a seriously harmful way. It's often used for children, animals, or playful spirits. It implies a sense of fun and cleverness in the troublemaking. For example, my nephew is a mischievous little boy. He loves to hide our keys and watch us look for them. She had a mischievous smile on her face, so I knew she was planning a prank. In the story, the visitors thought Milo was just mischievous, but Zeke knew the truth was much more serious. 6. Accomplice. This word revealed the real relationship between Zeke and Milo. Zeke whispered, "Good work, my little accomplice." An accomplice is a noun for a person who helps another person commit a crime or do something wrong. You'll hear this word a lot in crime stories and news reports. For example, the police arrested the bank robber, but they're still searching for his accomplice who drove the getaway car. She denied being an accomplice to the cheating, claiming she had no idea what her friend was planning. Milo the monkey wasn't just a pet, he was Zeke's partner in crime, his accomplice. Icebreaker. This is a super useful word for conversation. That strange sentence Leo used acted as a perfect icebreaker. An icebreaker is a noun. It's something you say or do to get a conversation started, especially with people you don't know. It's called an icebreaker because it's meant to break the ice, to get past that initial stiffness and silence. For example, asking someone where they're from is a simple and effective icebreaker when you meet someone new. The teachers started the class with a fun icebreaker game to help the students get to know each other. Leo's mischievous monkey line was a risky but very successful icebreaker. It was so unusual that it made Alara laugh and want to know more. There you have it, 7 powerful words and phrases from our story. Don't just leave them here, try to use one this week. Maybe you can describe a mischievous pet or a time you had to pluck up the courage to do something. Make them your own. Part 3. Time to practice. Great job! You've listened to the story and you've learned the key vocabulary. Now comes the most important part, practice. This is where you activate the English you're learning. You turn passive knowledge into an active skill, just like Leo did in his apartment. First up, a few listen and answer questions. I'll ask you a question about Leo and Alara's story. The important part is to pause and say your answer out loud. It really helps build the connection between your brain and your mouth. Then I'll share the answer. Ready? Let's begin. Question 1. What was the name of the cafe where Leo worked? Pause. Answer. The cafe was called The Daily Grind. Question 2. What did Alara order every single day? Pause. Answer. She ordered a large black coffee. Question 3. What was the title of the short story that Leo found online? Pause. Answer. The title of the story was Zeke the Zookeeper and the Mischievous Monkey. Question 5. In the story about Milo the monkey, what special word did Zeke use to describe Milo as his partner in crime? Pause. Answer. He called Milo his accomplice. Question 6. Why was Alara so surprised and amused by what Leo said? What kind of book was she reading? Pause. Answer. She was amused because she was reading a book of detective stories and thought he might be cleverly referencing her book. Excellent work! I hope you answered those out loud. Even if your answer wasn't perfect, the act of trying is what builds fluency. Now for our second practice activity, shadowing. Shadowing is a powerful technique for improving your pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. You're going to be my shadow. I'll say a sentence from the story, and you repeat it right after me. Try to copy my exact pronunciation and the music of my voice. Let's try it with some of the most important lines from the story. Repeat after me. Be careful out there. You never know when you might meet a mischievous monkey. Pause. That is not what I was expecting to hear this morning. Pause. My story is about a zookeeper and his monkey who is secretly a master thief. Pause. An accomplice monkey. I love it. Pause. You're a very good storyteller. Pause. Wonderful. You can do this with any audio you listen to in English. It's one of the best ways to practice speaking when you're by yourself. It's what Leo was doing in his apartment without even knowing the name for it. You have done amazing work today. You've listened, learned, and spoken. Conclusion. Today, we saw how Leo the barista turned his fear into confidence. He didn't use a complicated grammar book or a boring app. He used the power of one single entertaining story. He learned that making English fun, making it a game, is what allowed him to relax and speak more naturally. He built a bridge to another person, not with perfect grammar, but with a shared laugh. Just like Leo, you can use stories to build your confidence and improve your English every day. The lesson here is clear. Find a story you love, play with the language, and don't be afraid to say something unexpected. You never know what wonderful conversation it might start. The key is to find joy in the process. All right, now I've got a challenge for you. Your journey doesn't end here. In the comments below, write one sentence using one of the words we learned today. You can use mundane, fixture, intrigued, mischievous, or accomplice. Or even better, tell me about a time you had to pluck up the courage to do something. I will read every single comment. By writing, you're taking another step, just like Leo did. Thanks so much for learning with me today. If you found this story helpful and you want more lessons like this one, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me know that you enjoy this way of learning. Keep practicing, keep telling stories, and keep building those bridges. I'll see you in the next one.